So hi everybody, hola, and welcome to another edition of the Astrology Show, being hosted by quantumplanet.world and quantumplanethealing.com with myself, Davyd Farrell, and the wonderful Pam Gregory, astrologer. How are you, Pam? It's so lovely to see you again.
Always wonderful to see you, Davyd, in so much sunshine. And I always enjoy our very rich and kind of out there conversations. So I'm sure we're going to have another one of those today. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, likewise. And of course, we do have far out conversations sometimes off camera. And so we have to be a little bit careful about what we say. But today we're going to be looking at the Cancer Solstice that is coming up on June the 21st. And we're going to be looking at the big moves, as we always do, a few weeks out as part of our what is now a regularly quarterly preview with the equinoxes and solstices. And this is a big time, right, Pam? I just checked into your full moon video yesterday, and we are actually filming this piece a few days ahead of it being released. So this is going to go out on May the 31st, and we're recording a few days ahead. But this, as we were just talking about off camera, this is a big weekend that we're now moving into from the 27th, 28th of May. We've got that big full moon coming up on the 3rd. So this is really what happens after the full moon, right? In the run up to the solstice, and then what happens afterwards. So, there are a lot of big energies in the world right now. Lots of big news stories, depending on where you put your attention. You might get different impressions. And so I guess what we're looking at here is, again, this incredible choice point, right, Pam? And I think that the astrology is constantly showing us is which choice do you want to make? Where are you being compromised? Where are you not being sovereign? So where would you like to begin on this super, super important, powerful Cancer solstice in 2023?
Yeah, thank you, Davyd. Thank you. That's perfect. Yeah, I'll show the chart in a minute, but yes, it is a massive period of choice point. I've talked about this in various videos because Pluto is square to the nodal axis, and it will continue to be so pretty much the entire year up to November. But it's very strong right now and until mid-July in particular. Lot of intensity, and it's a very clear collective choice and individual choice of, okay, do you stay with the old, the stale, the routine, the deadening, because it feels safe, familiar, or like the Fool in the Tarot, do you step into the new, do you step into something unfamiliar, but you know that's going to give you much more soul's growth. So it's like one road is as heavy as treacle and the other's as light as a feather. And your soul knows which choice to make, but it's down to each individual. And so many people are really feeling this right now. And as I say, it will continue really the whole year. But ultimately, of course, we will all come back to unity consciousness, but for a period of time as determined by the collective, there is this major, major fork in the road. And the further, it's like two speeding trains leaving a railway station, and the further out they get, it gets harder and harder to jump from one to the other. And if you're on that more spiritual timeline, it will just, and for many people this is true already, for me, even for me, it's true that the 3D world is just fading away to dust. I don't watch the news. I'm aware of what's happening, but I'm not disturbed by it or emotionally engaged with it. It's just fading further and further away, because my focus is, what are we going to create? And that's really what I would encourage people to focus on. That the demolition is going to happen anyway, because the low frequency vibration that was sustaining it is collapsing. So it's energetically it's a done deal. So focus on love, joy, peace, abundance, gratitude, what we're going to create, and we're going to get there faster, because it's how the collective also play the music for the astrology. So let me show the chart now, if you're happy for me to do that.
Yeah, and just to say, beautiful. I totally agree with everything you just said there. And I've seen this other astrologers also saying the same things. Like, do you just keep doing the same thing, even though it's causing you suffering and pain and not really serving anything, but you don't know what else to do, so you keep doing the same thing for fear of trying something different that may give you a different outcome, but you don't know. And this is where humanity is, I think, being asked to jump into the unknown without the guarantee of security, unless you have absolute trust. And if you're in your heart and connected to your higher self, you have the place of trust, knowing that your higher self is only going to sort things out for you in a way that's beneficial for you. Why would it do anything else? Why would he or she do anything else? And that, I think, is the choice point where trust is the absolute necessity. But how do we get to a place of trust so that we can feel a little more comfortable that when we jump, that maybe we're not on our own, and maybe it's not going to be something really, really bad, but actually something really amazing. Because for sure, you know, some of us have done that leap already and maybe have been in different places for a while, but the collective, I can sense, is still very much like stuck at that place. So it's like we're looking now at the astrology to see how can we start to break the programs, the spells, the old paradigms, however, at the individual level and at the collective level. And that's what's really exciting, because what you just said is what I've been experiencing in the astral planes for a couple of weeks, which is a complete collapse of the old paradigm.
Yeah.
For sure, there's debris and rubble and blah, 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 but we need to start building back up from that. And this is where the ascending eagle from the Scorpio, you know, we're into the last 2 degrees of South Node in Scorpio. And it's a little painful because it's like the last of the poison wants to come out, you know, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about that. And you did a beautiful job in your full moon video about that. And because I'm having a nodal reversal return, it's very, very pertinent for me right now. And I feel like I'm being turned inside out because my North Node is at 3 degrees of Scorpio. And so this has been quite the process.
Wow. So this really is a whole new episode. You know, deep closure of the deep past, not just this life, but many lifetimes. That's the inverse nodal return. Stepping out, you know, the Fool and the Terror, whole new fresh beginning. But yeah, you know, all that you've said there, the astrology is really going to help us with this, because the astrology does give us the sheet of music, it gives us the map, and we then decide how we play it. But remember, with every equinox and solstice, it's like we're striking a tuning fork for the next 3 months in terms of the backdrop of the energies. So that's why we look at these, and they're so important. So let me show the chart, because lots to say here.
I have to say that I will be, I think, pretty glad when we finally get these nodes out of the Scorpio Taurus axis. It's been a bit like having all of my teeth pulled out, and I have lost a couple of teeth in this process, actually. So,
right.
But I feel it's so important because, you know, anyone who is paying attention, Pam, can see, right, you know, and that piece that you shared about who has their birthdays and who was created with their sun at 2 degrees of Scorpio, to me, was a big release point. And for anyone who gets what we're talking about, you'll see that the same individuals and organizations all have their birthday at the same point, which is interesting because it's where the nodes are at the moment. So
it was just remarkable. You know, I happened to stumble across that. So just remarkable. So just picking up what I said, Pluto is square to this nodal axis. This is the North Node, one of Taurus. This is the chart for UK for the solstice. And therefore, the South Node is always exactly opposite 1 degree of Scorpio, really in that last degree before the nodes change signs into Aries and Libra on the 18th of July. And I'll come back later and talk about that. So so this is the choice point I was talking about that will continue really all the way through to November, because even when the nodes move into Aries and Libra, we have Pluto until next January now at 29, or the last couple of degrees of Capricorn. So they move back in to cardinality, as it were, from fixity to cardinality. So that T-square still continues. Now, absolutely, as you've been saying, Davyd, the South Node is very linked to toxicity, issues of trust, betrayal. Often with Scorpio, because of the sting in the tail, it's associated with medicine, particularly anything either diagnostic or anything which is invasive. You know, think of the pointy end of the scorpion's tail. So, you know, that's very interesting in itself. But this becomes like a seesaw, because the wonderful tall planet Haumea that I've talked about many times, she is at 29 degrees of Libra, so conjunct this South Node for some months. She's hovering around the end of Libra, early Scorpio. And she is one of the strongest expressions, archetypes we have for New Earth. Even her shape is egg-shaped, because she's linked to the Hawaiian goddess of fertility. She can generate babies from all over her body. She can reverse her age from an old crone to a young maiden. She is about creativity, regeneration, and producing wild food with her magic stick, the Makalai. She's a very powerful archetype for New Earth. So we've got this seesaw of the collapsing old and but the birth of the new happening at the same time. It's not that we have to wait for the old to collapse before we build the new. They are simultaneous processes. They're happening right now. What is also, there's so much to say here, what is also very interesting is because Pluto is now retrograde and Saturn is retrograde, their archetypes are both linked to power and control of the old world. Saturn rules Capricorn, that Pluto's been moving through since about 2008, and just going to be hovering through those last 2 to 3 degrees until January, darts back in finally September to November, and then fully into Aquarius from November, December next year for 20 years. But these are the old symbols of power and control of the old world. Now, they're both retrograde, and that means that we are, not only are they digging deeper, finding other layers of where there's any lack of integrity, transparency, accountability that they're going to bring to light. So they're digging deeper. But we as humanity are going back over retrograde, thinking how well the systems of power and control have worked in the world. Yeah. Now, if we take, so they're both very kind of masculine, patriarchy type symbols. So the midpoint there of Pluto and Saturn is actually opposing this beautiful stellium grouping of planets in Leo. And Leo is about heart energy, which is beautiful. And it really is saying, with the collapse of these top-down systems, which is absolutely, it has to happen because of the energies, because the lower vibration energies are collapsing, because we've got such massive waves, and I'll talk about the evidence for this a little bit later, of new energies, new light codes, etc., coming in. It just can't be sustained. So it's it's this polarity that's linking in with Leo energy, which is about staying anchored in your heart. To be human, we have to stay anchored in our heart, because one of the potential dangers, shadow sides of Pluto moving into Aquarius, is controlled by technology. AI, controlled by technology, which is hyper rational, hyper intellectual, whereas to stay human is to stay anchored in our hearts. And this is what this beautiful stellium is all about. It's also, with Venus in the middle here, it's all about love.
Right.
It's having a love-based, heart-based consciousness that is so vital in going forwards. And this is beautiful, you know, Moon Venus conjunction here in Leo. These are the two feminine principles as well. Leo is also the sign, Leo along with Aries, they're the two signs I associate most with sovereignty. Yeah. So heart-based, operating from love, and as opposed to the top-down control we've had in the past, which is in danger of, as Pluto moves into Aquarius, the shadow side, controlled by technology. So I really, 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 really want to say here, be wise and conscious in the micro decisions you make in a day. If you're going to get a chip in your hand because it makes your shopping faster, think like a chess player. Yeah. Think down the line of where that could end up. Stay in your heart, stay in love, stay in your sovereignty, stay in humanity.
And isn't it interesting, if I'm reading this correct, sorry, Pam, is that you've also got Mars conjuncting Venus there. So we've got the dynamic of the Mars and the Venus, the masculine and the feminine, sort of galactic cosmic couples, you know, the balancing of the masculine and feminine energy in the collective is vital. Absolutely vital.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, much better balance. And this is beautifully feminine, you know, Moon, Venus, absolutely exquisite. And also all of this stellium is squared by Jupiter. And I've been talking quite a few videos recently about welcoming an expanded consciousness of love. So Jupiter, literally expanded consciousness in Taurus, ruled by Venus, square to the Moon and Venus. This is the expanded consciousness of love. You know, when you can't think of anything else, or you're running into negative, so, you know, not smart enough, young enough, welcome, flick it. I'm welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love. And here you have a perfect astrological signature for that, of where we have to go. And remember, this is striking a tuning fork for the next 3 months for us. So, yeah, so being very aware of that. Now, other things that are really worth highlighting here. As you mentioned before we hopped on the recording, Davyd, and I've talked about recently, we have Neptune exactly squaring the Galactic Centre, 27 of Sagittarius. It's going to be doing that until 2026, but very strongly through this year and next. And this is really emphasizing also, which Saturn and Pisces is doing, emphasizing this increased psychic sensitivity, the shifting of density to light body, the downloads, the telepathy, the increased healing ability, the tuning into the galactic, the stepping back to our galactic citizenry. You know, we are becoming crystalline. We're becoming light bodies in a bigger and bigger way. And this square is beautiful for you know, the dissolving of density. It really is, and tuning into those higher realms. And Neptune is also about unconditional love. It's about source, it's about healing. It is squaring Vada, and Vada was the wife of Manwe in myth, and together they created the universe. Vada created the sun, the moon, and the stars and set them on their course in the heavens. So she is, again, an incredibly positive, creative, powerful, a creator goddess of the universe. So she did it the first time, you know, she's now conjunct the Galactic Centre for some months and being squared by Neptune. And we also have Ixion, and just about in this square. What I also want to say is this is actually really an out of sign T-square, because the sun that will obviously have just moved into Cancer on the 21st of June, because that's what defines the Cancer solstice at 0 Cancer, is opposing this little grouping and squaring Neptune. So here we have another T-square. So the sun is really highlighting not only the Galactic Centre, which it happens to do at every Cancer solstice, by the way, but it's also highlighting Vada, the female principle who created the cosmos, the planets, the stars. So this is like a rerun of that, if I'm making sense. And the sun is also opposing Ixion. Now, this is very interesting too, because in the lower expression of Ixion, another dwarf planet, Ixion was the lawless brother of Pluto, who murdered his father-in-law, had no regret. He was exiled from heaven. Zeus took pity on him and gave him a second chance. He then tried to rape Zeus's wife, Hera. And at that point, he was spun off onto a burning wheel into eternity because, you know, he'd rather blotted his copybook. So in a negative expression, there is no moral compass. There's no regret over murdering somebody. And I think many of us can understand how that's playing out in the world. But at a higher level of expression, this is about following your passion as an individual, following your bliss, and going your own way beyond normal social mores and finding joy in simplicity. Just finding joy and simplicity, carving out your own path of joy, simplicity, and bliss. And this is also kind of echoing, in a way, Uranus in Taurus, because this is really partly about going back to the simple, growing food, being in nature, biodynamic, going, you know, in tune with the rhythm of nature, going back to simple joys. So again, we have our potential fork in the road, because with so much new technology coming in, it's going to be very attractive, very tempting to jump on that bandwagon. But there's a whole other movement that's saying, no, keep it natural, keep it simple, keep it organic, bare feet on the grass, back to nature. That's going to anchor you. So, you know, super, super clear. Other things to mention here. I'm sorry, I'll just get it all out and then you can
My mind's already completely just exploded. And I'm looking at
sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm going to watch the replay several times. But the other thing which I think is interesting and is Mercury, which rules Gemini, is moving very fast, particularly from the 11th to the 26th of June. It's moving very quickly. Gemini is quick. Mercury is quick. And Gemini is to do with the facts, the information, the news, but it's also our mental perspective on things, how we see things. It's the kind of lens through which we see things. Uranus, which is the higher octave of Mercury, is also now moving very quickly. It was kind of hovering about the mid degrees of Taurus for quite some time. It's now moving very quickly for Uranus, because it has an 84-year orbit. It is now at the degrees 20, 21, 22, where it hasn't been since 1940, because it has an 84-year orbit. So what that says is, particularly because just before the solstice, we have a new moon in Gemini, so new perspectives, new thinking, is about new ways of looking at things with new eyes, looking at the same facts with new eyes and new perception. And that's going to be coming in quickly, because both Mercury and Uranus are moving so quickly. Uranus is also the planet of awakening. It's like a whole shift of perspective. And wow, why didn't I see this before? And it's going to be rapid. There's going to be a real jump of energy at this solstice. And the other things to say, which are very, very interesting, this is going to be quite long term. Pluto, as I've said, is hovering between last few degrees of Capricorn and early Aquarius up until December 2024, when it moves fully into Aquarius for 20 years. Sedna is essentially its dancing partner. Now, Pluto has a 248-year cycle. Sedna has an 11,400-year cycle, but it equally is moving out of the last couple of degrees of Taurus, another Earth sign, and into Gemini. So both of them, kind of holding hands in this dance, are moving out of the last couple of degrees of a heavy, slow, dense, materialistic Earth sign and into air, which is much faster. And so this is really about a radical change in values, away from materialism and ownership and all the things I've talked about many times, you know, bank account, your status and wealth being defined by money in the bank. You know, we're going to move away from those materialistic values. And there's also a very strong theme here for both of them, because Pluto, as I've just said, is digging up any lack of accountability, integrity, transparency in those last few degrees of Capricorn, very much this year, but also to some extent next year. Sedna, the myth of Sedna, the big core of the myth is that her father, she's the Inuit goddess of the Arctic, essentially. And in the myth, she married someone who promised her the world, but the husband kind of betrayed her. So the father came to rescue her in a canoe, but a big storm blew up. And so the father, in order to save himself, throws Sedna out of the canoe. And when she tried to cling on with her fingers onto the canoe, he chopped her fingers off. So this is a big betrayal by the patriarchy. So not only has the husband betrayed his promises, but boy, you know, father doesn't come that well out of this myth either. He chopped her fingers off. So there's a very strong theme with both of these planets in a trine, in a dance together for the next couple of years, that the patriarchy in some way betrayed them as part of their archetypes. And Sedna was in a kind of numb shock at that point, but because she could no longer hold on to the canoe, her body and her fingers floated down to the deep Arctic and actually transformed into brand new sea creatures of dolphins and whales and turtles. So it's a story of spiritual transformation as well, and it's surrendering all that we have known, the values, the solidity, the density, the materials. You know, we're gonna, and Sedna, of course, thought her husband and her father had her best interests at heart. Hence the numb shock. Yep, I'm sure this is, you know, creating echoes.
I'm gonna have fun decoding this in a minute. I think I've got so many notes here, but I think do you want to continue, Pam? You've got a few more pieces.
Yeah,
just
and then come on, you know, if I get it all out, as it were, and then we
can sort of relax.
Yeah, and then you can share, because I know you'll have tons of things to share here. What is also super interesting, and I've talked about it in other videos, but we have so many planets and dwarf planets changing sign now and over the next 3 years. Sedna hovering between Taurus and Gemini. Pluto hovering between Capricorn and Aquarius over the next 2 years. Uranus moving into Gemini beginning 2025, fully in 2026. Neptune and Saturn fully moving into Aries in 2025. And generally the shift is from heavy water, earth into air and fire. One of the exceptions to that is Homea. She's moving from air, 29 of Libra, into Scorpio, but nevertheless it's a change of sign. Manwe has just moved into Aries at the Capricorn solstice, December last year, into fire. Oh, and one very important thing also, I want to. I'm almost done. And therefore this Cancer solstice is incredible in terms of the number of cusp planets, which signals a massive change of energy. Not over the next 3 months, I think, but because all those changes are happening over the next 3 years, we are going to see an incredible shift of energy, which is so fast. It's going to be, the pace of change is going to be unrecognizable. Just very importantly, is the sun here is exactly conjunct a dwarf planet called Chaos, I mentioned in the last video. Chaos is here at, remember, all of these dwarf planets, apart from Sedna, have about a 300-year orbit. This Chaos has 309-year orbit. It's at 0 of Cancer, so it's on the world axis. Remember, 0 of the cardinals, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, on the world axis. So therefore, when that happens, the planet's archetype is thrown into public prominence. Now, the myth of Chaos was that heaven was ripped from earth, creating an abyss or a chasm into which separation and division could intervene. But the actual conclusion of the myth of Chaos is that we are progressing back to wholeness. It brings humanity back to wholeness. And isn't it interesting that it is exactly on the world axis, coming into prominence at this Cancer solstice? Because even if we look down the road to the Libra equinox, it's already moved a couple of degrees ahead of that. So it's at its peak here, if you like, because it's at the 0 degrees of Cancer. So many of these planets thrown into prominence. And I really do see that from the 18th of July, as this nodal axis shifts into Aries and Libra, Aries is much more about, well, it's very assertive. It's about independence, sovereignty. It's dynamic. It's self-sufficient, moving away, South Node Libra, from any kind of codependency. We are going to be, forging our own path. I do think that things could become quite lively in the collective, because as this North Node moves backwards into late Aries, I haven't written her in here, but Eris, warrior, sister of Mars, dwarf planet, the truth teller, the street fighter, the one who stands for justice, social inclusion. The North Node comes to conjunct Eris for several months through till about October. So the collective could be feeling quite feisty about the truth, and Mars is also square to Uranus. If I ever want to see a signature for feistiness and demanding the truth, it is Mars Uranus. And that's quite tight. That's 18 of Leo to 21 of Taurus. People will be demanding the truth. And as I say, these facts, or we will be seeing them in a new light with a new perception. It's going to be coming in very, the energy hit is so quick. And it's going to get faster and faster. So yeah, that's kind of all for now. I want to just bring in one final piece at the end with my interchange with Rory Duff today. But just one very final thing before then you can speak, David. So many people have felt frustrated that there isn't more change appearing in 3D. I would say to that, don't hold your breath. And I would also say that everything that manifests in the 3D world that we can see has to have energy as its foundation. It has to come from invisible energy. It just has to. Yeah. The invisible energy that is building right now is off the scale. Yeah. It's like we've never known it before. Sensitive people are talking about this all the time. The light codes, the jumps in consciousness, the formation of the light grids, which are getting stronger and stronger. We as realizations,
lots of stuff. Yeah.
you know, we are forming new pathways of consciousness and light that others can follow. We are forming the energetic architecture of light that are becoming more and more solid and taking more form in every day that others can follow. So everything has to be born from that energy, and it's the energy here we're looking at. So don't get so frustrated, you know, trust the invisible, because boy, is it coming down the road. I mean, and once it comes down the road, it's going to be, you know, pretty speedy.
Wow.
Okay, Davyd, there's a lot that I'll come back just on that, you know, email interchange with Rory, but kind of over to you, because I know I've covered a hell of a lot in a very short time there.
No, beautiful. Thank you for all of that. And yeah, my head has been fully blown open by most of that. So I'm going to try and backtrack through the different things, and we can pick them apart a little bit more. But I'm going to start in reverse order because of the things most present on my memory. So I'm just going to start with what you just said with Rory, because I think it's really, really important. And what you're sharing is important, because everything starts at what we would call the 5D or higher dimensional level. It starts off as an etheric thought form. What happens in 3D can only be the result of that. Cannot be the other way around. Has to be that way around. So if we're trying to build the world from 3D, it's not going to work. And anyone who's ever tried to manifest from 3D only without really engaging with their higher mind, which is really just saying our imagination. You know, we need to start breaking down some terms so that people don't think that 5D is over there and the 4D is down there and the 7D is up there. It's like, no, it's like it's all happening simultaneously right here, right now. Everything is happening simultaneously right here, right now, always. It just depends where we put our perception. Most of the time, we've been programmed to put our perception into fear-based activities that require security and us having to go to work and plan a holiday 6 months in advance. So we're always thinking either in the future, or we're always thinking about something that's already happened that's probably causing us some angst or suffering. Very rarely, unless we are super conscious and meditate and practice and, you know, do our practice a lot, our head is somewhere else. When you're like that, you can't really manifest because you're not in the present moment. So what you shared about the Leo energy is really important, because the heart is the connection directly to our higher self. It's also the access to the plant world, to the nature spirits. It's where we can connect at that kind of more empathic level. The monkey mind, the lower mind, is really, really great at doing lots of things, not least of all setting up Zoom calls, meetings, writing emails, driving the car, doing the shopping. Without that guy, we're not going to function very well. So we're not meant to be throwing out the lower mind, the monkey mind, the ego. This guy has a really important job to do. But he's got a little confused in the process over the last few thousand years, because he's been guided to think that he's in charge. Right, you know, that the mind is everything. Not true. You know, again, I share the very simple Buddhist meditation of sit and meditate and see if you can find, where do you exist within yourself? Where is Davyd actually pinpointed in the spacesuit? Where is Pam in the spacesuit? Is it in the end of my finger? Is it somewhere in my ponytail? Is it in my, you know, whatever? And you'll quickly realize that you can't find the spot where you exist in the body. Now, I'm sure for many of your audience, this is already well known, but it's worth reiterating, because part of the shift and what the astrology is showing us is that we have to start being more like that in our consciousness and less attached to the 3D. But we have to still be in 3D, hence why we need to engage with the ego so that we can navigate it. Otherwise, we will get 0 degrees of chaos, right? You know, which is not an easy paradigm to create in. But with chaos energy, with conscious awareness and being present, we can create out of chaos energy. Very, very powerfully, actually. So I just wanted to say that, because I totally agree with what you're saying. And, you know, maybe I'll talk about this a little bit at the end, but there's something that we are releasing today, the same day as this video is coming out, from Quantum Plant Healing, called the Rainbow Bridge Journey, which is going to start in 13 days time and is going to show everybody how to do this process of manifesting from 5D down to 3D, but why it's so important that the 3D space physically and energetically is clean and clear. Because if you're contaminated, polluted, hijacked, misaligned, any or all of the above, and I would suggest that many people are quite a few of those, myself included at points, and having to do this work, is that we've got all those misalignments. We cannot really expect to channel our higher selves clear blueprint vision of our life for us if we're bringing it down into a dirty vessel. That's not woo-woo, I don't think. I don't think that's rabbit hole. I think that's just logic. And this is where I want to draw attention to the work of Veda Austin, which you've done before about the waters. What we've come to realize, and I've talked about this before, is that we are putting dirty water into our system. And that dirty water, as I shared a video with you, and I suggest other people watching, wonderful video by Caroline Mansfield, shows the effect of the graphene in the water and what it actually looks like under very, very high-powered microscopes. Fascinating. But if we consider that our body is carrying that toxicity and reacting to other energies in our environment that are also not helpful to us, it's going to be difficult to manifest. So I just wanted to bring that in because it's very much connected to the South Node in Scorpio, which, as we discovered through your wonderful interview with Julia Ballas, is at the moment conjuncting the Shapley Attractor, which for me was mind-blowing because it's right in the middle of all of my Scorpio and Libra stellium stuff. So I'm like, wow, okay, that's kind of interesting. So I think that there's a lot to talk about here, and I just wanted to bring that in. So the more that we can start to understand that everything is happening at the energy levels first, and it will eventually play out down into the 3D. But if we're looking for it on the television, we have to remember that the television has been under the control of other beings who maybe had their own agendas and didn't want us to see the reality. But the truth is, how can we ever be sure of any reality unless we're there witnessing it ourselves? And even then, you might get two people witnessing the same event and come up with a different version. So truth is a very subjective issue. And I think that that's also a very non-dual point to consider, that when we're seeing things unfold in the world, that maybe they're not exactly what we thought, but this is where the Sedna piece comes in. Because I would suggest that the betrayal by the patriarchy over the last few thousand years is almost complete and ubiquitous against everybody, but particularly against the sacred feminine, which I believe the Sedna story sort of exemplifies. But by trusting in the patriarchy and trusting in the process, the feminine was also then able to drop to the bottom of the ocean and recreate all of these new animals. Yeah. So even if there is a betrayal of the deepest level by the patriarchy, which I suspect is what we're all sensing and seeing, it doesn't really matter, because spirit also always finds a way to create out of that. The light is always working through the dark, right? So there's never any reason to be stressed about anything. There's always a reason to be positive about something, but you have to keep transforming it within yourself. You have to keep working with those Scorpio energies to go through a death and rebirth process. So I think that there's so many wonderful signatures here, Pam, that you've alluded to, and I think that that Sedna one was really, really interesting. But I want to throw in a couple of other lesser known asteroids into the mix, which we talked about before, but I think are super significant.
Shall I stop sharing here, David? Shall I stop sharing?
No, let's just keep this up for a couple more minutes, because I think it's useful, and then we'll come back onto sharing. But there's an asteroid, and I'm going to just directly own this one. It comes from this wonderful book by Demetra George and Douglas Block about some of the asteroids. But I picked out a couple that intrigued me when I was looking through them this week. And one of them is Pandora at 2727 of Pisces, absolutely conjunct Neptune, which of course is squaring the Galactic Centre. So I'm going to, in all honesty, just read a couple of little pieces from this, because I think it's the best way of describing it, so that your audience will get an idea of the energy of Pandora. So Pandora is a Gemini Scorpio blend who, through her unorthodox actions, raises the rational intellect of Mercury to the intuitive and revolutionary vibration of Uranus. Pandora denotes an affinity for innovation, unexpected discovery, and controversy, hence the Pandora's box. You don't know what's going to come out, right? A Pandora personality is marked by curiousness, a restlessness, and a rebellious nature. So there can also be the energy of troublemaker in this mix. But I would like to suggest that really what we're looking at here with the opening of Pandora's box, with that nice Neptunian energy in Pisces squaring the Galactic Centre, is an opportunity for a much more higher dimensional Pandora's box to be open, which is going to gift us the tools of creativity and play from the higher dimensional realm, so that we can do exactly what we were just talking about and Rory said, which is manifest much more consciously down from 5D into 3D. So I think that's
beautiful. I think that's absolutely fabulous. I'd really, particularly because it's square to the Galactic Centre, and really Uranus moving into these new degrees. I mean, Uranus is always about the galactic, the foreigner, the outsider, but we are stepping back into our galactic heritage, and the fact that Sedna is coming back to its closest point to the Earth, 11,400 year orbit, and she goes way out to the edge of the Oort cloud. So she's bringing back new cosmic information back to the Earth to reawaken our galactic heritage. We're going to remember that. So yeah, wonderful, David. Yeah, very well said. I didn't know about Pandora. That's absolutely fascinating.
No, and I think there's a lot more to discover about Pandora. So this is kind of a little bit of a lifting of lid. But the other one that I think is really interesting, which is also at a very late degree, is Urania, 28 degrees and 4 minutes of Cancer, which is opposing the Pluto, slightly. Well, no, it's inside. So
No, it's pretty tight.
Urania,
Yeah.
pretty tight. So what I'm understanding from this, Urania is really the asteroid that represents the idea of astrology, astronomy, numbers, quite kind of mathematical. And so when I'm seeing this being opposed by Pluto, what I'm understanding again is that this is an opportunity for us to reevaluate from more wisdom, more knowledge, how we view astrology and astronomy and how we can start to work with it. And as I've been talking to you about, we've just recently got connected to the Stellar Nations fixed star astrology, which I now understand from working with this material is really about our cosmic humans journey, our soul's journey that we went on through many different star constellations before we manifested down into 3D. It's the journey before the journey. It's a bit like watching some of these prequel box sets that they keep making of series that you love, and now they've gone and made the one before. This is Star Trek, the original series before the original series, right? What happened to Kirk before he was Kirk? It's kind of a bit like that. So I think that this is really, really exciting. And again, the more we look at these KBOs and asteroids and centaurs, and even now this fixed star astrology, which we've been, I think you brought in at various points with the Aldebaran and Algol, there's quite a few hundreds, and they're grouped into different nations to do with dragons, angels, serpents, whales, dolphins, arthropods, great bears, Christ consciousness, and a few others. And what we understand is that is our DNA. That is our star DNA that we carry within us. So in my work, I've always connected to dragons and angels since I started doing this work over a decade ago. And I never really understood why it was so strong for me until I looked at my fixed star astrology and understood that I spent a lot of my soul's journey in those constellations, working with those frequencies. Mind-blowing stuff. And actually the day that this is being released, we also have a brand new introductory video on our brand new website, quantumplanet.world, talking with a wonderful lady called Leslie Shankman about how all of this works and how we can work out our cosmic human self by looking at the fixed astrology and how it connects with our traditional astrology. So this to me is Pluto opposing Urania, and us now being given, because we're doing all of the cleaning work on ourselves, activating our DNA, cleaning up our DNA, and activating the memory of our soul self from beyond this realm, which I think is super exciting.
It's incredible. Yeah, it's incredible. And that, yeah, this is really an expanded consciousness, as suggested here by Jupiter. And of course, it's squaring the moon, and the moon is ruling this Cancer solstice because the moon rules Cancer. So it highlights that square even more. But, this is the takeoff point for people to really, really get that we are not victims of fate. We are not victims of the planet. This is a set of modeling clay in a particular pattern. This is a set of modeling clay or a sheet of music. We get to choose individually and collectively at what level we play that, or we form it. Right. Nothing is set that you will be miserable and victimized and fated. It's up to us to take these energies and play them or form them to their highest point. And I really want to emphasize, this is the beginning of our real mastery, the mastery of our thought, our intention, working with our heart energy, really see it as this huge shift in consciousness of understanding the power we have as individuals. And I just want to kind of bring up this email exchange with Rory today. Rory Duff, who I often talk about his work. I think he's an incredibly unique and gifted pioneer working with energy lines. He's a geobiologist, he's a master dowser. I think his work is so different and so exciting in what his piece of the puzzle is bringing to the picture. But knowing I was going to have this session with you today, Davyd, I wrote to him, and he's incredibly busy. I didn't expect him to reply, but he actually replied very quickly. And because I was asking about how is he measuring, and it's, very much he uses scientific method with this. How is he measuring the energy lines, and what is he anticipating around this solstice? And he said, directly after this solstice, he believes that we're going to see another 20% increase in the width of energy lines. Now, originally, a few years ago, when he started to do this work, and he always said that we should meditate the day before every equinox or solstice, not the day of, the day before, because there was a harmony. All of the Earth's energy lines came into harmony the day before. So the harmony period was a day. This is just a few years ago, not long at all. The harmony period is now extended and extended and extended. It is now 34 days around each equinox and solstice. And he has been saying by December 2024, which of course is when Pluto fully moves into Aquarius, we are going to have year-round harmony of all of the energy lines across the Earth for 200 years. And he is seeing that as 200 years of peace. So with his measurements, and he's very scientific in his method, as I say, he is saying that the Earth is receiving more and more source energy, and rapidly the Earth is evidencing via the stretching of the harmony period, the stretching of the width of the energy lines. The Schumann resonance is peaking in strength and amplitude. The Earth is going through her own very, very rapid upgrade. And because we are sandwiched in between this upgrading Earth at speed and all this atomic energy, new light codes, etc., we have to upgrade or exit. But it's rapid because we have never ascended in physicality before, and certainly not at this speed. All this, the solar flares, we didn't have any M-class flares in 2018. The other day we had 10 M-class flares in a day. Yeah. It's just crazy. So that is what is creating a lot of, physical disturbance very often. You either can't sleep at all, or, you're in the dormouse finals, or tinnitus, or dizziness, or nausea, because our little energy systems individually are having to move so fast. So remember that this fast moving incoming energy from source, from very high frequency light, is absolutely foundational to what is then manifested, but you have to work with it and not go into gloom and doom and think everything is lost and it's the end of the world. Whatever you do, don't do that.
No, that's wonderful.
Do that.
Yeah. No, Rory Duff's work is amazing, and of course, I'm also a geomancer, and I was blessed to learn from my teacher, Dr. Patrick McManaway. So, working with earth energies is something that I think some of us have been doing for a while on the planet, cleaning things up in the background. It's can be challenging work sometimes, and Rory, of course, has been out there talking a lot about this for a while, and his work is really important. And I don't advise people going out there doing geomancy if you don't know what you're doing, but I suspect that many of us behind the scenes have been cleaning up the land dragon lines for a while. And for sure, Rory's been one of the biggest proponents of that. So that's really wonderful to hear. And it resonates deeply with me for lots and lots of reasons that maybe is not appropriate to share right now. But I definitely feel that we are coming to a place of convergence where the earth energy lines, the dream lines of Mother Earth, are going to be free to do what they want to do, because the alternative overlay has now been removed. And we are seeing the very, very dregs of the overlay being removed. If you know what to look for, you can decode almost anything that you see out there. Dandelion has often said to me, whatever you want to know, anything about anything, you can see it immediately within your fractal vicinity. All you have to do is be in the present moment, keep your eyes open, and spirit will start to give you answers through all manner of things: animals, buses going by, messages appearing. Spirit finds a myriad of ways to communicate with you. And so it sounds like a strange thing to say, but you can ask almost any question and wait for it to appear in your environment quickly, but you have to be super present, super present, and not being distracted. So I think that's really, really interesting. And, for sure, don't get distracted by the illusion. As you say, the theatre is falling apart. The backdrop is faded and grey. The actors are beyond a joke, and we're all kind of getting a little bit bored of the storyline. But there's a little bit of me, certainly, that wants to see exactly how does it finish. And I want to see the whole theatre collapse. And I can walk away and say, okay, it's done. I think the theatre is being held up by duct tape right now. And that everyone's cleared out of the reception. The refreshment booth has closed down. And the only people who don't really know are the people still on stage, because the last person is turning off the lights. But still, the actors are on the stage. So, I think we can have fun with how we perceive all of this, and, not to get pulled into the emotional triggers, which is what some of that wants you to do, so that you start acting from a very 3D, 4D place and projecting and getting caught in all of that mess, which is
That's
why.
really, shall I stop sharing here, David?
Yeah, please do actually. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's really important that you say that, because we have to stay in observer mode if we are going to stay on that higher timeline, this fork in the road, because if we get emotionally involved negatively with the drama, we will be quantum entangling with that lower timeline. We have to just detach, stay in neutrality, stay the observer, and yeah, we can know what's going on, be aware of what's going on in the world, but keep your distance emotionally, and put your emotional energy, life force, focus, intention into creating something beautiful and magnificent. And remember, we are creating from invisible. We can create anything we want now, and particularly when we come together as a collective. Rory was talking about this in his email. When we collect in numbers on these sacred sites, we meditate, particularly the day before the equinoxes and solstices, we are strengthening that wonderful energy around, we are activating those sacred sites. And so know what we are doing. We are working, yes, we're working with the invisible, but it is starting to manifest very quickly, and quicker and quicker and quicker. The more of us do this, and the more of us focus on that. If you're focused on the drama, you're never going to see 5D.
No.
If you're focused on 5D, 3D will be dimly aware, but it's turning to dust. It's fade, like a black and white movie. It's just fading away.
I couldn't agree more, and that's beautifully put. And I think the thing that I would like to share at this moment with the audience is give yourself space. And maybe this is where I'm just going to share a little bit about our Rainbow Bridge journey. This is a 13-day shamanic process that will cleanse the physical field, even of the offered medications and the side effects of those from the last few years. This is a journey that will be done over 13 days, working with a series of protocols, working with powerful plants, including the Artemisias and pine, which is designed for anybody to do. But it's really the most important thing, and I've talked to Zach about this at length, is that if you want to experience a new earth, no matter whether you did or didn't get involved in the processes of the last 2 or 3 years, many people have, and many people are affected by it. But if we want to journey to new earth, we have to cleanse. Absolutely have to cleanse. Me and you have been talking about this since we first connected, and we've been working with Wormwood both since we first connected. So this is a journey to do that. But the reason I'm saying this now is because what we've understood is that me and my partner Bella had to take 2 weeks out, literally on our own personal lockdown, to create the space in order to manifest the very big visions that we have for New Earth, which were all sort of there, but they were getting a bit jumbled up. They were getting interfered with. They were getting toxified by the environment. But it took 2 weeks out of also cleansing the body of the dirty waters. We switched to drinking not just filtered water, but distilled water. And since I started drinking distilled water, I have to say, Pam, I feel so much more clear. Not that I wasn't that clear before, but I can tell the difference, that there was still like a 5% of sludge, maybe even graphene oxide, in my system that was still attracting with its frequency other similar frequencies. And we even talked about this before, famous bottled waters that we think are not. It's like we even tested some of our own waters through the distillation machine, and were horrified to see that the mineral waters were even worse than the tap water, which is not encouraging. So, these are not small things that I'm sharing. These are really, really important. Cleanse the body, get the waters clean and clear, but most of all, love yourself enough to take time out to do this process, or a similar process, whatever it might be, for yourself. Because then there are many, many amazing things coming down the track, like the connection to our cosmic selves, like the revelations of Mayan time unfolding much more coherently, because we're going to shift from a 1260 time frequency to a 1320, which is what our ancestors had lived by. Because what that does very cleverly, as I've realized, is it keeps you in the present moment of what you think is every day, but actually it's just a series of unending moments that somehow are connected to each other, which is a much more different way of living than if you're going, okay, by Tuesday of next week, I have to do this. But if you're just living in an unfolding, it doesn't happen that way. And as Dandelion always says to me, we don't do stress in New Earth. So if you're getting stressed, you're getting caught up in the entanglements, however they might be manifesting for you. So staying clear and clean is important, but by giving yourself that space, you're telling yourself, I love me enough to be centered in myself, to do this for myself, so that I can then start to be able to connect more cleanly and clearly to my higher self, who only wants to do one thing for us, and that's to provide an amazing life. Anything else is what Lucifer gave us, which is the ability to go left and right with our free will and pull ourselves away from our destiny, which can be fun, sometimes we get into trouble, and then we come back to the center and realize, oh, actually, I think I just want to be in the flow that my higher self created for me, and not take these devious left and right turns that can often be fun, but often get you into karmic trouble, right? So we're coming back to our center line self, the middle path, as a Buddhist would call it. And when we get into that beautiful alignment from here in the heart up to our higher self, then we have that beautiful clear channel. But we have to make sure that our chakras are all clean and clear, that our toroidal field is flowing, that we don't have low frequency gunk attracting more low frequency gunk. And it's a practice. And, you know, I'm sorry if people want to have an instant get to new earth without doing anything kind of a gig, but it's not really the point. The point is the journey, right? And if we don't want to do the journey, then one has to wonder why you want to be here at all. You know, we chose to be here. And I think that's also really important, is every one of us signed up to this craziness, right? This incredible hallucination. It is Mother Earth, but it's incredible, right? So why not take part? And I think that that's where we can really start to have a lot of fun with this, is remind ourselves that we're meant to be having fun and playing here. And if we're getting all bent out of shape and serious and stressed, then maybe we're not playing the game the right way. We now realize how the game was being played by the 1%. But now us, the 99%, have got the same rule book, and we understand how it was being done. And now it's our turn. And this is where it gets fun. So
yeah, I really agree. And talking about being in the present moment, North Node moving into Aries. Aries is very much the sign linked to I'm in the present moment. You know,
right.
Absolutely super focused and present. Yeah.
So
wonderful.
Anyway, you know, just to conclude, so this particular healing process will start on June the 13th, run for 13 days. So it's going to run over this solstice, which I think is amazing, because we're going to be working with all of these energies of the astrology and more to set up people so that they can really step into the process that we have been talking about, I think, on every video since we started working together, and you say in every video, which is like, we are able to manifest new earth ourselves at the individual level. And if each one of us does that, don't worry about what everybody else is doing, take the responsibility for yourself. So I think that that's probably it, Pam. You know, this has been amazing. I love doing these. I want to say a huge thank you. I know I say this to you quite a bit, but really feel blessed that you've been such a wonderful teacher for me over the last couple of years, doing these videos, teaching me about astrology, inspiring me to go and look at KBOs and work with people like Kelly. And I just have so much fun with all of this, and so much of what is here in my life is because of doing this with you, Pam. So I want to say,
oh, bless. I'm so thrilled. I'm so thrilled you're living a wonderful life, and you know, you've manifested it. You've manifested it yourself. So you know, down to you. It's your efforts. But yeah, it's been an absolute joy to share these sessions with you, and we'll hopefully continue to do that, because they're so, you know, we are in the crucible of change. These are massive, massive times of spiritual transformation that we're living through. So I hope these conversations that Davyd and I have are really helping people out there to stay focused, positive, and just, yeah, bring it on.
And you know what, just as a final thought, we didn't really talk about him today, but my new buddy Hidalgo, another asteroid, is currently at 18 degrees of Scorpio for this solstice. So he's going to be directly opposing Uranus in Taurus, which I think is interesting because, you know, if anyone watches the Hidalgo video, he was the warrior priest archetype, and he was a revolutionary. And anyone who's watching the news right now can see that Mexico is very much in the news because our volcano over CDMX is on the verge of exploding. And so the whole area is being reinforced. So there's a lot of mythology around Mexico being very much at the center between the eagle and condor prophecy that joins the Americas, because Mexico is the bit that joins. So I feel that in the world to come, the geography of the world influences is going to change a little bit. And I think it's super interesting that Hidalgo wanted to speak at this time with his north nodes are also exactly the same as the ones we're experiencing at the moment. So we're witnessing time loops playing out, and Hidalgo's journey to San Antonio to reinforce Mexico against the invading French was never completed. But now we can see many activities going on the border that are now bringing many other avatars of the past work to their conclusion in this time space, because we're able to give quantum awareness to it. So
amazing. Yeah, amazing. And of course, Uranus in Taurus is about new lands, extreme earth changes. Homer, in her fire goddess expression, created the islands of Hawaii. So we should expect, you know, some big stuff happening to create new earth. Absolutely.
Revolutionary energies, however they manifest. So I just wanted to share that. You know, there's a lot of fun to be had with the astro.com chart system, and you can program in all kinds of things. And I had a bit of fun with this the other day, final thought, and I found an asteroid called Datura. First flying object in the sky that I have found that is named after a plant, and it happens to be a plant that I know. So it's got me thinking about, I wonder how many other asteroids there are up there. Maybe there is a plant astrology chart that we can read through understanding the quantum intelligence of plants. And
that's amazing. That's amazing. Everything connects. That's amazing.
Everything connects. Again, this for me is the Urania opposing the Pluto, and being given the opportunity to think differently about our own journeys. And we might even be able to name asteroids after ourselves and chart our own journey through New Earth by charting the asteroid that we've named after ourselves and how it's affecting us. Who knows? I'm having fun with this right now, but I think this is a great place to finish. Thank you so much, Pam, for this. Please do share again with the audience who don't know your work, where they can find out more about you and your newsletters and so on.
Yep, pamgregory.com, everything is there. I've got a very busy new YouTube channel, Pam Gregory Astrology, not Pam Gregory Astrologer, that's the scammer, Pam Gregory Astrology, and that's very busy, and I put out several videos a month, and always things happening. Yeah, and very active on social media too. So yeah, lots going on. So just helping people through this massive transformation. So thank you again, Davyd. Love the conversation, and looking at your beautiful scenery and sunshine. You're having a wonderful life there.
Bless you. Thank you so much. And just to conclude, thank you again, Pam, for all the other videos you have been doing. I found many of them to be super useful, particularly the one recently with Julie Ballas. That really clicked a lot of boxes for us at this end. But for those of you who would like to find out more information about the Stellar Nations fixed astrology work, please do go to our brand new website, quantumplanet.world. And if you're interested in finding out more about the Rainbow Bridge Journey to Oneself, which will be taking place from the 13th to the 25th of June, please go to quantumplanthealing.com. So, as always, thank you everybody for tuning in to this wonderful piece that Pam has provided for us. Again, thank you, Pam, on behalf of everybody. You are not only a national treasure, but becoming a global treasure. So I hope that this has all been logged in the Akashic Records, and that you will get your roll call of honor when all of this is done, because you absolutely...
Payback time.
Right, and we are going to meet on a Mexican beach for a pina colada sometime in the future, because I've already requested that. There's two.
Fabulous.
Fabulous,
Well,
exactly.
Loved it. Thank you, Davyd, and love to everybody. Bye for now.
Take care, everybody. See you next time. Ciao for now.